He knows that we can't change the world drinking coffee in our socks. But he'll ask you to ponder, encourage you to wander, and buy you a drink on the rocks.
Welcome everyone today to Inspired Path. We're here at Forest City Brewery and we have Chef Natasha with us. Welcome.
How you doing?
Good. You know, I really wanted to get right into it.
Yeah.
And you have such an inspiring story. And can you take us back to like a childhood when your family left the Ukraine, you know, the year it was, what it felt like, you know, to come to this country? Like, what does that look like in a family?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me on the show. I'm really excited about being here. And, you know, I don't really get to talk about this as much as, like, I guess it feels like it's been 30 years, you know what I mean? And I feel like I do talk about it all the time, but this is a great opportunity to really kind of reflect on it 30 years later. You know, I guess if I had to start from the very beginning, this would be like a great like novel, you know. But I mean, kind of the basic story is that, you know, my parents realized that during the Soviet Union, throughout the 80s, that some things are coming to an end, you know, and what's going to happen to them and to the people and then to their children growing up in post-Soviet, you know, society. And just realizing that they had that foresight to understand that is amazing, you know. So they obviously tried to find ways out. My father was a very high-profile artist, and it was very difficult for him to leave. So he basically had to come up with an escape plan, which took several years, and sending you know, secret messages to different different people throughout the world, kind of to get someone to sponsor them for a refugee visa or a work visa or something like that, in secret, because that would kind of put him in like a bad political situation, I guess. You know, if someone was to find out that he was trying to leave potentially forever. You know, and I remember being, you know, 7, 8, 9 years old, and my dad would have, you know, a friend over who spoke English, and he would dictate these letters to the President of America, you know, and this guy would, you know, translate, and they would write it, and then they would put it in secret different envelopes, and somebody else would take it to the post office. It was very spy movie, you know. Yeah. And what was kind of fascinating to me now is that, like, my parents made me aware of all this. They wanted me to understand what's going on. And in some ways, I remember them saying something along the lines of, we want you to understand what's going on and be aware of it, because we don't want you to say something, raise a question like with your friends or somewhere outside, because you need to know that this is a secret operation. And wow. This was not uncommon for a lot of people who had to leave this way. You know, eventually, my dad ended up going to a lot of different embassies. America was obviously the biggest one, and he went several times. And then towards the very end, there was many different stages of interviews. Towards the very end of this interview process, the whole family had to come. So we went on a train to Moscow from Kiev, and this was in the middle of winter. It was this like your classic Russian winter, you know, where it's just bitter cold.
Like in Siberia.
Yeah, you know, and it's just it was crazy. Very, like, a lot of snow, very very cold, and he stood in line at the embassy, which went around the corner, for hours that day. Just freezing. And I just remember that so vividly, that he didn't give up. Like, I'm about to cry now, you know, that he stood there in this bitter cold in the line with all these other people who were all afraid that they are being marked for being in that line. not knowing if this is going to go anywhere, you know. And then my mom and would take me and my brother, and we would sit in a cab for 20 minutes here and there just to warm up. And I think that moment was so inspirational to me as a child, knowing, like, realizing that this is what this person is doing. And then in the embassy they interviewed us, and eventually we received refugee papers, which were also supposed to be kept secret. And then later on, sometime after that, we left, but the actual escape plan was to leave on New Year's Eve. Because New Year's Eve is like the Easter and Christmas and everybody's birthdays combined.
Oh, wow.
That's how big New Year's Eve was. So kind of the plan was to throw the authorities off that, nobody would ever leave on the biggest holiday of the year of the, first, who would leave all their friends and their family. And then the other way to kind of keep this as a kind of like a story, they had a story. So they bought different tickets to different countries on the same day. So if somebody was following us, they wouldn't know like which train to follow, or they have to follow multiple trains. We couldn't take anything with us, so we couldn't take any cash or like belongings, because it would seem like we are leaving forever. So if we were caught, we could say we're just going on holiday. We're just going on a Christmas vacation. We'll be back in 2 weeks. So I think we each had a suitcase, and that was it, And again, like, this is not something that they told me later. Like, this is like, as it's happening, I'm aware of this,
At 9 years old.
At like 9.5, like almost 10. But, and I just remember this, we would have to say goodbye to friends and family. And so we couldn't throw a big goodbye party. Because again, what are you doing? You go on vacation, you're throwing a big goodbye party?
We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
You want everybody around me. So for weeks, people would come in pairs, or like a set of grandparents would come and then another set of grandparents separately on different days during different hours of the day. And my parents gave away all their belongings. We had a car, they gave that away. They gave away a huge library. They had a whole collection of rare books. My father sold as much artwork as he could, but he had to give a lot of it away, his life's work. He was 40 at that time. Just heartbreaking. So yeah, just being that young, knowing what's going on, I'm so glad that they made me aware of it. And just realizing, like, these people are really putting their entire life on the line. They're literally jumping off a cliff and leaving everything behind, and like hoping maybe the parachute would open, or maybe there's like something to catch them at the bottom. We wasn't sure, And it was inspiring, and it was, it was scary at the same time. And then the actual last day, where on December 31st, when we got to the train station in Kyiv, again, nobody could come and say goodbye, so my dad's nephew came and my mom's sister. And she was carrying a yellow rose. And a yellow flower, a yellow rose in our culture is farewell, goodbye, could be even death. Like, it's a symbol, a very vivid, unmistakable symbol.
Wow.
And I swear I remember this moment in black and white and a yellow bright like flower. Do you know what I mean?
It's
like,
very visual.
It's a very visual moment. And of course my mom was like, get rid of this flower. Like, you have to throw it out. Like, you cannot give it to me. I cannot accept it. Like, we are being watched, and like we've ended our life here. We have to like leave and hope to survive. So that was just so heartbreaking, and it was like a movie script Do you know what I mean?
I can visually see it as you're talking about it, because you're right.
Yeah.
Totally black and white.
And it's like light snow's falling, and it's gray, and it's like it's the early 90s, but the feel of it is like you're going off to war in the 40s. You know what I mean? Like the train station, and like people are crying and saying goodbye, but then there's other people celebrating. It's just this very surreal situation to be in, while you're also experiencing this potentially life-changing like moment. Right. You know,
and probably because it was so life-changing, that's what made you so present and made it so vivid.
Right. Yeah, you're right. You know, it was like you're feeling this right now, and you know you should remember every moment of it. And then you know we boarded, and you know they couldn't really hug. You know, they couldn't cry. I don't know how they did. And then my father's nephew, who was, I don't remember right now, I want to say like, or maybe early 20s, or like 18, 19 maybe. Yeah, I think high school, early college, young kid, you know. He tried, but he couldn't do it. And the train's taking off, and he's running after the train. Again, like in a movie, you know. And then I completely break down, and I start sobbing, and I'm in the window watching him run, you know, after the train. And my dad pulls me aside, and he tries to comfort me. And at the same moment, he's like, you can't. You need to stop right now. He's like, I am so sorry. We're all like on the verge of something, but you have to stop. And yeah, and then like a 3-day journey of kind of, you know, we had to jump trains and exchange tickets. My father had met a art collector who bought the actual tickets to America from Germany. We just had to get to Germany somehow. And then my dad was carrying a few of his paintings like rolled up, and he was going to exchange that for the tickets because we couldn't bring cash. So, you know, it was like those 3 days in itself is like a movie in my head. Do you know what I mean?
And that was all travel by train?
It was so it was travel by train, and then we had to switch trains to get to Germany. And then, you know, exchange, you know, get the ticket, do the ticket exchange, and then, I mean, you know, we flew to New York after that. But, you know, on the way there, my parents had the refugee packet sewn into their luggage, you know. So if they were arrested and that was confiscated and they would have found that, like, that would have been the end, you know. So it was very important that they didn't find those documents, because they could not be touched or opened until we got to American soil. And if they were tampered with or opened, then our refugee status wouldn't stand, and we'd probably be deported back.
Wow.
Yeah. And then there would be nowhere to go back to, because the apartment was gone, all our possessions were gone, all our money was gone. You know, they did talk about that we would potentially be separated, which I don't know.
Here, or if you had to go back?
If we had to go back.
If you had to go back.
Yeah. So, it was a very, very, very rough journey. And then when we arrived in New York, they put us in a refugee safe house. And there was a lot of refugees and immigrants from different parts of the world. And they would stay there for a couple of weeks until like a community would accept them somewhere in the country. And so we got shipped to different cities. Some stayed in New York, some went to Cleveland, some went to Texas. And then this hotel, it's now, I think, a woman's shelter, is less than a mile from where my restaurant was.
Wow.
Yes, like 20 years later, full story, come back, make the American dream happen, open a restaurant in New York City, less than a mile from this hotel.
Well, let's get to that in a minute. Did anyone so now, what, like you said, what an amazing foresight that your parents had to see the direction the world was going, and especially in that area, and to be able to say, hey, we want to be able to raise our kids and our family somewhere else. Did any of them speak English? Or did you speak English by that matter of fact?
You know, by that time, you could get a lot of like English books or English language books. There was a morning program for kids where they taught kids English words, you know? So I knew table and apple.
Okay.
I knew those two words and I was very proud of myself. I think my parents took a language class for like a couple of weeks before they left. But no, we weren't fluent. None of us were fluent. You know, we needed translators for the first few months at least. When we got here, you know, I had to take ESL classes, and we didn't have the language component.
So did you just get thrown into school at that point? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. You know, obviously Cleveland has a big Ukrainian community. My first school was Tremont Elementary.
Oh, wow.
Just down the street. Yep.
Oh my God, love the synchronicities.
It's kind of crazy, right? You know, and now the restaurant I'm at now is like 2 blocks away. So my brother and I both went to that school probably for not very long till they had to find some other location for us. Yeah.
So how is it as a child, like a month earlier, I don't know, you're in school there because this was winter time. You're in school over there, and now you're in school over here. Totally different world, I'm sure. I mean, it's cold here too, but at that time of year, so it's not like you went from.
So I mean, obviously, incredibly different. Just the school environment is very different. The way our school was organized is that you go from grade 1 through grade 10. You graduate in grade 10 with the same people in the same classroom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So those 20 people or whatever are your family for 10 years, you know? And here you go from class to class after like 5th or 6th grade, and it's different classmates, different teachers. So that was a major part where it's like, oh, how am I going to find my group? You have to find a group in every different class, and there was like you're given a group, your built-in group.
Okay.
So that was obviously shocking. You know, the language part was crazy. I was extremely shy with the language. I was terrified of speaking with an accent and saying things wrong. Just I don't know why. That was just. Because in Ukraine, I wasn't very shy, you know, I was very outgoing. I'd love to try new things, learn new things. And I don't know, somehow something definitely changed in me with this process. But the other thing was that it felt, maybe just because of being an immigrant and not speaking the language, it definitely felt very, you're over there and the rest and the other people are here. Like there was an immediate acknowledgement that somehow you're different and not the same, and you won't be, you know, it's kind of hard to put into words, you know.
No, but I'm sure even at that age as a child, you know, and children can be very like, well, that person's different. Right,
yeah. You know, I immediately made friends with this girl named Christina. So I remember her. I don't know if she remembers me. And she would call me every day. And this was maybe like 4th grade. And I have no idea how we had a conversation. I believe I would say yes and no to everything she said. You know, I think like the one thing that kind of felt good when I came here, they had to give me a test and see which grade I go into. And I ended up going a grade ahead because I guess had more of the math done. So I felt really good about that. I'm like, see, at least I'm better than the third grader or something like that, you know? Yeah, I think I was pretty lucky throughout most of like my schooling. Like, of course, there was bullies and, like I said earlier, you know, people, like even within my own community, kind of make me feel bad that I speak Russian, you know, even though I'm Ukrainian. But I think all the way throughout, I had very supportive teachers. Like my art teacher in high school threw me a big party for when we became naturalized, when we became citizens. And, you know, then I'm like, why are you singling me out? Like, I don't want to be different. But, you know, that was very supportive and very kind of progressive, where like, you know, this is what happens with refugees, and this is kind of the process they go through, and this is what it's like to become a citizen, and, you know, don't take it for granted. You know, as a kid, I was like, stop pointing it out. Yeah. You know, and I had in high school, I had a really great group of friends, you know. But the feeling that like you're different, the food you eat is different, you know, the way you interact is different, just never really went away, you know. No,
I'm sure, because it's just, you know, you're right. It's you know, growing up here, I'm not sure that there's the same junk food and fast food and everything that's, you know, so prevalent on the streets here.
Well, you know, it's funny. The first time, like I had any access to McDonald's is when my parents were going to Moscow to the embassies, and the first McDonald's opened up, and they had to stand in line, and they had McDonald's, and then they brought back the packaging. You know, that's what a lot of people did. Right. They're like, they had the McDonald's, they ate the food, and then they're like, but save the packaging. You know, the straws.
Because it's so Western.
Yes. And then I had McDonald's for the first time when we came here, and I hated it. I was like, this is so salty, and there's no flavor. I mean, I love it now. Right. You know, I'm a chef late night. I have to, you know, it just happens.
That's right.
But, yeah, well, the food part was that was so hard to get used to, you know. Before we had a car, we would walk to the store, and then we try to get like whatever we can and try to make our own meal out of it. And, you know, the bread.
You mean traditional meals?
Well, it's not. It was more like whichever bread we got. Like white bread just tasted terrible to us. Right. You know, butter was terrible. Yeah, right. And this is going back like 30 years before like we had like great bakeries, you know, open up everywhere.
Right.
I mean, they were there, but not on every corner. Yeah, so it's just like, you know, we had corn from a can, and I was just like, this is just terrible. So it was, that was very hard to kind of get used to. But, you know, again, luckily we found the stores, local stores in Parma that sell a lot of that food.
Now you said your parents were in their early 40s. Had they traveled outside of the Ukraine and outside of Russia? Had they traveled to the West at any time in their lives prior?
Yeah. Well, so my father like turned 40 as we got here. Like we left. His birthday is January 2nd. We arrived in New York on January 2nd. So it's all these little milestones everywhere, you know. And he traveled quite a bit, you know, throughout the world. He worked as he was an artist, but he also worked as a translator. So he's fluent in French. So groups that would come in from, I don't know, wherever, then he would take them throughout the Soviet Union, but then he would also go to like Mexico and...
Well, so that had to have helped some with your...
Yeah, and then my mom grew up in Hungary for part of her life. Because her father was stationed on a base there. Her father was in the army. So they both have, you know, kind of like a world outlook, you know, and like they're not, I think maybe that's probably what helped them fight this fear of leaving and going somewhere else. but once they got here, it was very scary. It was very difficult. People would try to take advantage of you and give you wrong advice. And again, we didn't have any family. We didn't have any friends here. Excuse me. So it's just kind of believing that, kind of like trusting in yourself and then putting that trust into the world, hoping that these people around you will kind of come through for you, because there's no reason why they should have trusted anybody. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that was incredibly brave of them, and I was able to witness that, all throughout.
Sounds like that was a source of some of your strength.
I feel like, I think absolutely, because through all of it, of course, you wanted to fit in and be like a normal American kid. And on one side, my father didn't want me to have an accent. But on the other side, they're like, you will never speak English at home. You have to speak your native language at home, so you never forget. But when you speak English, you better be flawless.
Oh, that sounds like a big challenge as a kid.
So I think from the very beginning, it was like, do not forget who you are. Just because we left doesn't mean everything about it was bad. But now that you're here, do the best to enjoy this life and not fit in, but like this is your life now. So be good at it.
So here's where I got to get to. So how did you decide that you had a dream of being, a top world renowned chef? I mean, where did that come from? Was that inspired over there, or did that come somewhere along the way?
I always wanted to be an artist, and my father's an artist. His whole entire family are artists. We lived in a building designated to the country's best artists. I was destined in 6th grade to go to the art academy and follow through on that and become an artist. And it was kind of, the family trade. And I loved that for myself. I was like, I actually enjoy art. I love being creative. So perfect, great. Like my life's all figured out. I love it. And I have an in because like my dad's pretty big. And then when we came here, that had to change immediately. My parents' careers had to end. He could not be who he was back there. My mom's was one of the first people to work on the HP computers or whatever it is. She's one of the first women in the world to do that. And here she had to be a waitress. You know what I mean? So massive blow to their egos. And they had to kind of go and pick up random jobs and kind of then get back on their feet eventually. So immediately, art was not like you could not be an artist. You cannot do anything creative. You have to become a doctor or a lawyer.
That's
the immigrant.
That's the
cliche. Yes.
Yeah, but it's also the typical American thing too.
Yeah.
You're not going to do that thing with music or art.
Right. Right. Exactly. So. I definitely fought them on that my entire, all through school and everything. I was a great student, but at the end I was like, I need to go to art school. I need to go to culinary school. I need to follow my passion. I ended up obviously not doing that for a long time. I was a high school teacher. I went to pre-med and nursing school for a while, and I was like, let me do this. Let me follow through on this. See if I enjoy it. If I'm gonna be good at this. And it never clicked. I was miserable. I did not. I like teaching. I like the personal part of it and the creative part of it, but I did not enjoy it as a career for me. And the same thing with nursing. And I did that for years, but the passion was always to cook. I would cook at home. I would cook in the mornings. I would cook for all my college friends. I would put on food shows in Tremont in like 2003, or earlier, whatever it is. It was always there. And then me and my brother were living in New York, and he was kind of like, you just got to do it. You gotta go cook, And I was a substitute teacher at that point, and I was a translator, and I decided to go to the French Culinary Institute and take a tour. And the minute I walked in, it was like another scene from a movie. Just write the script already. I remember walking into the kitchens, and it was just like, everything's back in color, and I'll never forget that the smell of the kitchen and meat it's indistinguishable. There's nowhere else in the world you can have that experience. And just so many people doing so many different things, but still working on the same thing, in the end, it was just, it all kind of made sense. Of course, this is where I belong. This is why I wanted it all along, because it feels so great. And I walked through the school, and my mind was made up immediately. My parents were not happy about it. They're the biggest fans now. They're super supportive, but obviously they're like, man, not gonna be a doctor, lawyer. And in their defense, back then, chefs weren't very, successful. It was kind of a dead-end job.
There definitely wasn't much going on in Cleveland at that time.
No. And then, especially to be a woman as a chef, that was unheard of. You know what I mean? So, in their defense, I understand that they were worried for me. And, most people didn't make it. I think 1 or 2 people per class end up actually working that career, and maybe one of those people will be successful.
They didn't want you to be the starving artist.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, it's a gamble. You might make it, you might not. I think for me it was just, this is it. This is exactly what I was looking for my whole life. That's why I feel so great. And I'll do anything to make this happen. And it was difficult, but it wasn't emotionally difficult, because I loved every moment of it. I loved all the hard work and the late hours and the early mornings and all of it. But I also feel like I'm lucky that way. I don't think a lot of people get to find that in their life. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe they do and they don't listen enough to it.
Right. And you mentioned that the one thing you mentioned, when you walk through the doors, it ignited that passion. Mm-hmm. So you knew, and and you're right. Some people don't listen to that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that was definitely a moment. It was a calling. You felt the pull. And then when I came and that moment happened, I realized it, and it was kind of scary. And I think in that moment being this is what you wanted, isn't it? So go for it. You have to now, And I feel like a lot of people do get stuck right there. Do I jump off this cliff now? Or do I just look and see, oh, wow, that's cool, that's great, So, and, maybe parallels my parents leaving everything behind and just jumping off the cliff, Because, it was the prognosis for being a chef at that time and a woman wasn't great. Do you know what I mean?
And being in New York City, which isn't expensive to live in either.
Absolutely, yeah. But I don't know. There was just this drive that I felt, and I could hear it, and I could feel it, but I could also understand that it was scary. I wasn't oblivious to how difficult this is going to be. And I think maybe for some people that would be the end. I'm too scared. I don't think I can make it. And I've obviously I've had those thoughts. I feel like most people do, and I think for me personally, just growing up being like, well, they did it. If they could do that, if they could escape and make it and get me to this point, I should be able to take it from here, you know?
So it sounds like in New York, though, one of your biggest supporters was your brother. Mm-hmm. That you had, even if your parents weren't 100% on board, you had a brother that was saying...
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I kind of just remember this moment, where he was like, you just gotta do it. You gotta do it. And literally, I think a week later, I was enrolled, and then I probably worked for a few more years, and we would kind of fantasize about running our own place and how we would do it. And we were always passionate about, our culture and our food. And we would have people over and always do some kind of Ukrainian Russian food. We would never do like chips and salsa and dips. It was always like a couple of bottles of vodka and some herring and some salad olivier. There was always caviar. And we're like 25.
Nice. Not the typical American.
Yeah.
We'll get a bag of Doritos from the store.
And we're 25 and you're all coming over and drinking lots of vodka and eating lots of herring. And, people loved it. And our friends loved it. And I was like, I'm tired of people kind of pushing our culture down as like meat and potatoes or like beets or sauerkraut. Like it's so much more than that. And having those friends around me who enjoyed it, I think really helped. And then even in school, in culinary school, when I had to do my own presentation, I always did Eastern European foods. Not all of my chefs were very supportive. They were kind of like, you're going to pigeonhole yourself. You're going to be an ethnic chef. You're going to have ethnic cuisine, which is kind of a dirty word, Okay. And they kind of warned me against following that passion, that you should like be more mainstream, or if you're gonna pick a cuisine, it should be one of the 5 big ones. And I mean, I think at every step I was like, I will just do what I want to do. You're right. It's extremely, extremely dangerous as far as a business plan, but I just feel like I have to, face this fear and just believe in it. And I think I really did believe in it. You know what I mean? Like I really felt like I want people to taste this. I want people to enjoy it. A lot of it was kind of, I guess there's this thing, like I think that at least for me as like an immigrant and refugees, that what we feel is kind of your culture is not valid, because you left, that place is bad, so I think in a lot of ways it's like as you grow up trying to validate that where you come from is okay, is good. And I think a lot of it was the driving kind of force for why I feel so strongly about my culture, Yeah,
I'm sure, because it's, and the outlook's different for me here, because the outlook for me is not so much that it wasn't a good place that you were from, but how I look at people coming into this country is I look at is they wanted to make a better life for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's essentially is true in what it is, but I feel like when you leave a country that you were born in, that you have your whole family and your whole history, and then you were supposed to be there your entire life, you kind of feel like it's not like a feeling of fail, but it's kind of like, I don't know how I'm trying to describe it, but I guess a little bit of like you have to justify like your culture is still okay,
And I can imagine that, because I on one hand, I can't imagine like me ever having to leave here. So that just seems like such a huge leap of faith. And you're right. I guess I could see myself sitting there trying to justify, those things.
Right. It's kind of like, especially going through the whole naturalization process, like you're so happy to be an American. But then, there's this thing of like, you have to kind of abandon maybe your other country in a sense. Do you know what I mean? I guess it's kind of a complicated kind of feeling, but here, let me explain it in a different way. So, a lot of like kids my age when I was growing up, immigrant kids, like refused to speak Ukrainian, Russian in the home, and their parents encouraged that. They're like, you need to just be an American because it's shameful or bad or like, to be who you are. So it's kind of like erasing that shame. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
That something about you having to come here makes this place better than that, and that place is bad, and because you're from there, something's wrong with you. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So it's like this feeling of like lesser than.
Okay. So that obviously brought the passion through to continue with that line of cuisine.
Yeah.
So now you obviously took another leap of faith when you opened your own restaurant.
Yeah.
Because a lot of chefs don't do that.
Right. Yeah. Part of it was like reclaiming who you are, obviously. The other part of it was, when I did work in all these other restaurants, I studied everything, so I had pretty good feeling that I was confident that I could do this, like actually logistically do it.
You mean the business side of it
The business
as well?
side of it, yeah. And I don't know. Yeah, obviously, it's always been a dream. We worked really hard on finding the place. That was very difficult. We couldn't secure any loans. Now that I look at it, I'm glad. But people did not want to support, how old was I? Like 29, an immigrant who wants to focus on Eastern European cuisine. They're like, you're going to go nowhere. You're never going to make it. No, thank you. Goodbye. That was everywhere we went until the day we opened, and everybody was like, oh, okay, shit.
They know what they're
You're
doing.
right. You're right. Not that part was easy, like we really had to work really hard on that.
No, I'm sure it wasn't. So tell me a little bit about so you had this restaurant. I saw it in the video, but it obviously had your passion behind it. What was it about? Like, you were there for a while.
Yeah,
we were
there for a while. I guess it's definitely part of the American dream that you have your own business. Like, I feel like that's kind of instilled in you for all Americans, I think.
There's a freedom to it.
There's a freedom to it, and I feel like for an immigrant, that's kind of like, you're good now. Like, you can stay. You're secure. A lot of it, most of it, I think I was 29, turning 30, or I just turned 30 or something like that. It was, I've had a decent career in education, and I just felt like I was mature enough to do it. But also, I think I just wanted to do it. It seemed like really fun and exciting, just start this new thing and pick everything out and, do my own menu and have a chance to educate people about it and hire all my own staff. It's that I still love that part of the restaurant, not just the cooking part, like all the aspects of it to that, the people aspect of it, working with farms, like going to the market and picking stuff out. Like, every aspect of it was exciting to me, and I wanted to participate in every aspect of it. And my brother ended up finding the place, which is, New York, extremely difficult. The rents are insane. The buying a place is ridiculous. And we found a place that had a lot of stuff in it already, which was really helpful to us. It's our first business. We, put all our own money into it. My parents were big investors in it. And we were, pretty successful for the most part. My parents would come for every holiday. They lived in Cleveland. Still live in Cleveland. But, they would drive up all the time and they would help. And it was definitely felt like a real family business. Also lots of yelling and screaming and fighting as a family business goes.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Especially when it's your kitchen.
Yeah. I mean, I think at one point I had like a little banner above the kitchen, like welcome to the asylum or something, So, I mean, it was exciting. It was so much fun. We got noticed right away. We were in the New York Times. We were on TV. People were excited about us. And we felt like, oh, wow, this is real. Like, this does matter to people. And it was kind of a local place, too, So we had a lot of regulars for years. We knew them by name. They spent all their birthdays and holidays with us. Every New Year's Eve, we would throw a big party, and then the four of us would get together and remember the whole journey. And, so every year I post that story, like a just little snippet of it, like the anniversary of that moment, that journey that started all this,
And like you said, how synchronistic that it was a mile down the road from where you came when you got to this country.
Yeah. And I didn't realize it for a while, like maybe several years into opening the restaurant, I didn't realize it. It was kind of like fated,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And there was a lot of stuff like that, like 90, 91, and then opening the restaurant in 2011. Yeah. Like a lot of that stuff is always like in little compartments.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
That means you're in the flow.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it felt like very like this was all meant to be somehow, It was difficult, but it wasn't a struggle. Like, what I'm saying? Like it was like rough seas, but like we had a great ship.
Nice.
I don't know. Something like that.
No, absolutely. I like that analogy. So it got you to New York. How'd you get back here to Tremont? Like what was that the next stop, or am I skipping something in between New York and Cleveland?
Kind of New York started going through some rough times, and a lot of like there was a lot of kind of small chain restaurants that would open up and like just blow up, and in 5 years they would fold up, and some of that kind of wave of like this is how you do restaurants took away from smaller like mom and pop shops, as you would call them, and I didn't like that. Like I kind of saw maybe some of this isn't going like the right way, bit like really old school places were closing down. And there was like 7-Elevens popping up everywhere. And New York goes through all these crazy changes all the time. And I love New York. I just drove through it a couple of weeks ago and bawled my eyes out, But I don't know, something, I was like, maybe we close this up for now and, go to Cleveland, check it out. Like things were really starting to happen in Cleveland. All of a sudden, Cleveland was on the map for culinary, and restaurants were opening, and James Beard Foundation was looking at us, and it just felt like the right place to be. Like Cleveland had a moment, and that's kind of the basic story there. And I came back, and I felt, right back at home, and was very welcoming. Very open. I love the chef community in Cleveland. It's very kind of supportive. And I love my New York chefs, so many of them. But there was definitely kind of every person out for themselves. Do you know what I mean? Because of the competition. And I feel like it's a little bit more supportive here. There's a little more freedom, and also the fact that we're surrounded by amazing farms and producers.
Yeah, here you probably are a lot closer to the farm than
Yes.
you were in New York.
Yeah, just the fact that the West Side Market is right here, and I'm there all the time. It was just again, like kind of like a fated, like right time, right place. This is where I need to be right now. And again, I love it. I love every moment of it. I'm really happy with what we're doing at Southside. I love that, the reaction we're getting from the local community and the support from the community of chefs. I feel like this is the right place right now.
Well, that's awesome. You get some of your own dishes in the Southside.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot
some traditional.
Well, one of the biggest fights for me in cooking with my point of view was that I don't have to be making pierogies for it to be a Ukrainian dish. The way Ukrainians cook, the way the Ukrainians braise or smoke, or the herbs they use, that's what makes cuisine. It's not necessarily like the dish.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? Because there's, like, for example, like I grew up with a lot of cilantro and coriander, and people don't think that that's a top ingredient in Ukrainian food.
No, as soon as I hear cilantro, I'm thinking like Mexican salsa.
Right, exactly, But, so Mexicans would put it in a salsa, or like a pico de gallo, which is like tomatoes and jalapenos. And then I grew up with putting that in like a eggplant salsa. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's almost like Georgian from Georgia, the country. And so I really enjoy using this platform to kind of show people a different side of the culture. Because most people will be like, oh, it's kielbasa and pierogies, right? And I actually don't have that on the menu.
I think that now that's a typical American thing, saying it's this.
Right, yeah.
And not fully understanding what the tradition is.
So I really enjoy, at Southside, again, we have regulars for 20 years. We're going to be celebrating 20 years next year. So we're in our 20th year now. And I think also just such a great energy in that block.
Yeah, the building is too.
Yeah, there's an energy there that has kept this place going for 20 years. People love the food. Some employees have been there for close to 20 years.
And that says a lot.
That says a lot.
Especially in today's business
Absolutely. And then, the soul of the restaurant doesn't change. It's kind of a place for everyone. But obviously, as chefs change and as trends change, our menu is going to change a little bit. And clearly, I have a different perspective on what I want to showcase. But I think overall, it's still kind of, a place for everyone.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So anything last things you want to tell anybody, like, that's struggling with their own dreams?
Mm-hmm. I think if you're struggling with your own dreams, maybe, number one is find people who have achieved those dreams and kind of study how they did it. Maybe go talk to them, get inspired. And you're not going to make it anywhere unless you completely believe in yourself. Doubt is okay. Doubt drives you to find solutions. Fear drives you to try to make better decisions. Anxiety can drive creativity. All of those things should not stop you. I think finding people who can support you is very big. So if you don't have people supporting your dreams, and that's kind of maybe what's stopping you, then find somebody who will. Like a legitimate person, not some rando.
Right.
Find people who are are into what you're doing and are good at it and successful in it, and use them as mentors, for example. I was lucky, obviously, because eventually, from the start, my brother supported me. Eventually, my parents were super on board. I had very supportive friends. It doesn't hurt that I was good at what I was doing. It gave me enough courage to get better. So if you're good at what you're doing, just keep getting better and find people that can help you do that. You're not going to do it on your own.
I love it. I'm strongly believe in you need to surround yourself with people that absolutely, support what you're doing. And the ones that you don't, you just don't share your dreams with those people.
Yeah. Yeah, just because, people are not being supportive. I mean, obviously, be smart. Maybe
Right.
your dream is ridiculous.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, but I think, overall is, don't be afraid and believe in yourself and you use that fear to just be better. If there's something like culture-wise or that your family and community doesn't support because this is just not what you do in that culture or maybe in that family. I would say kind of from the perspective of like LGBTQ community, a lot of people who come out are not accepted by their families or their communities. And it could take going to New York and being part of that community there. I would say if you're that unhappy, if you truly believe in who you are and what you want in life, and you're passionate about that, and you're doing the right thing for yourself, then you need to leave a bad situation. Hopefully your family and community will come around, and support you eventually. But if you can't change people's minds just by talking to them, then you have to go find another community, be successful, and hope that your original community will come around. That's as much as I can say on that topic, because, obviously if somebody's struggling with something that I could help, please come and I will personally talk to you about how I followed my dream to become a chef and going to school and how hard that was. And I think the most you could do is reach out. And now there's places that you could do that. And there's, podcasts that talk directly about that. Don't kind of like shell yourself in and reach out, and somebody will always reach back. Somebody will.
Because originally you didn't have that support with your parents.
And, it wasn't like they kicked me out of the house or anything like that. It was that fear of that as an immigrant, you have nothing to fall back on. We don't have an inheritance. You don't have grandparents. We don't have land. You already have stigma on you from, having an accent and being, an immigrant, like all of that. It's just the fear that you have nothing to fall back on. That you just need to be financially stable. And the thing is, like, you can't guarantee that you'll be financially stable in one career or another. Maybe some engineering careers pay more than some, or creative artistic careers, but it doesn't guarantee that you will be successful and at the top of the range in that career. I think for like most refugees, it's hard to believe in yourself because, like I said, you already had to overcome this whole thing of escaping your life. And then the safest thing to do is kind of link up here and try to mimic the life you had and try to make something out of that. But it doesn't work like that anymore. You can leave your community to go out and pursue your dreams. You don't have to stay in the Ukrainian village or on the east side in that community. Of course, with like, Asian parents or Russian parents or Ukrainian parents or Arabic, like it's very hard to get away from it. And the best thing I could say is find somebody who can talk you through it. And Yeah, I don't know. For me, I believed it was the right thing for me, and I wanted it very badly. And I believe that once I start going, my parents will come around. And my parents loved me, we were very close. We're still very, very close. I think I knew that that no matter what, that's not going to change. They might not be very supportive of my career move at the moment, but they will still love me, and I think that they will come around. And they did, The one other thing I want to say is that, believe in yourself, but also believe in other people. If you so strongly believe in what you're doing, people will see that and they will believe in you. It might take a long time. It might take years, but eventually they will believe in you because you believe in yourself.
I think that is a huge key. You're right. Because of, that strong belief in yourself attracts other people who will be supportive.
Yeah. If you're a young immigrant or refugee in your community or your people don't think you're doing the right thing, prove them wrong. Prove them wrong. When people see somebody who's strong and driven and dedicated and is overcoming great odds to follow their dreams, they will change their mind. They will see you in a different light. They will want to follow. They will want to support. They will want to be part of your dream. It might not happen right away, but you have to trust in yourself, and then you have to trust in other people.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So if someone wants to check out your cooking, check out Natasha, you can do a little plug for Southside or finding you or...
Yeah, sure. So obviously my Instagram at Chef Natasha. No, wait, Chef_Natasha. Okay. I'm on Instagram at Chef_Natasha. Why can't I do this? Okay, my Instagram is Chef_Natasha. Obviously, also check out the Southside's Instagram. I have a little project called Chef in the Land, which I'm just kind of starting now. So you're the first person I've mentioned that to publicly.
Oh, nice.
But it is on Instagram as well. Obviously, come see me. I'm always in the kitchen. And I love talking about food and culture. So feel free to, say hi to the chef and I'll come out and chat.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Natasha. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much for watching us on Inspired Path. If you've got an inspiring story or know somebody that's inspiring, hit us up in the comments below. And of course, give us a thumbs up if you like what you heard, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. Thank you.